So introduction to pseudocode. So what is a pseudocode? Pseudocode is a kind of structured English for describing algorithms. Okay, it allows the designer to focus on the logic of the program. So what does this mean? This means there is no need for you to worry about the syntax of the programming language. Okay, so you have many different programming languages. They have their own particular syntax. When you're designing a program with pseudocode, you don't have to think about on the syntax of the specific programming languages. Okay, so pseudocode can be broken down into 5 components. You can have variables, and you can have things assigned to those variables. You can have assignments. You can have output, input. You can have selection, or you can have iteration. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to look at each one individually. Okay, and so the first one we're going to look at is assignment. How do you assign something to a variable? Okay, you can write simple statements to actually assign something to a variable. Okay, so for example, if you have this variable called total, okay, so in pseudocode you could just simply write the name of the variable, and it means it's automatically declared for you. Unlike the programming language, you have to declare something first in some programming languages. So here I have a total, and the way to assign something, you just have to put a simple arrow to indicate that something is going to be assigned to this variable. Okay, so I'm going to assign 5. So this means the 5 will be assigned to this variable called total. You can also assign other variables into a variable. So you can just simply write, for example, in this case, adult is actually assigned to cost. So whatever the value is inside adult, it actually goes into cost. But you can do other things with it. You can multiply the same variable. You can add other variables to it, and you can multiply again. Okay, so you can do stuff like that. Or you can have things like, if you have a counter, for example, you're counting something, you want to increment it by 1, you can do counter is assigned to counter plus 1, and you will actually increment by 1. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is actually output something. Okay, so the output, when you output something, you can just simply write the word output. I prefer the word output to be written in capitals. Okay, so you write the output, and then basically you have your statements. You can have it basically statements written down. Whatever the message you want to give out to the user, you can just write that down. So in this case here, you said please enter your name. You can, when you write output, you can have the message, you can have it within the brackets. That's correct, that's no problem. Or you can have a double quotation mark. That's also correct. Or you can have a single quote for the output for your message. It's still all fine, they're all correct, so they're all fine. Okay, so now how do you input something? So just once you have your output, okay, to the user, so if the user reads the message, he's going to type something in, you're going to get a user input data. So how do you actually store the input data? So the first thing you need to do is basically you create a variable. Okay, so you can again simply just write the name of the variable. Here I have a variable called first name. You can see I have 2 words there. You can have first and the name. Even though I have 2 words, I concatenate them together. The variable names are always 1 word. You can't have 2 words. If you separate them, that's incorrect. You have to put them together. So I have first name concatenated together, okay, it's joined together. So then you put an arrow to indicate that, okay, there's something actually going into there. And what's going in there, I'm just going to write the word user input, which means whatever the user types in, that particular data is going to be stored inside this variable called first name. So the next thing we're going to look at is selection. Selection is a construct allows for a choice between performing an action and skipping it. Okay, so you can have selection statements like if statements. So you have your if statements, and then here in between where it says conditions, you can just write your statement conditions here, whatever conditions. After you have your conditions, if the condition is true, you can have your statements. Otherwise, you have your else statements, and then you can else statements. You can write the statements here as well. And just to end your if statement, you can just write end if, and that will be correct. Okay, so end your if statements. The next thing we're going to look at is iteration. Iteration means repeating something, okay, more than once. You can have section of your code you want to repeat, or it can be line of your code or lines of code you want to repeat. Okay, so there are many different types of iteration statements. So the first one we look at is for loop. Okay, so for loop, you can have your for loop. To start your for loop, you just write the word for, and then you have your conditions here. Well, this is a control iteration. You can repeat how many times you want to repeat. You can control it. and then you have your main code that you want to repeat here, main pet, you want how many times you want to repeat, and you want to end it, you just write end for, and it will actually end your for loop. Okay, so that's your for loop. The next one we're going to look at is a while loop. So you have your while loops, there's your while loop, and you can write your conditions here, whatever the condition you want to put it there, and whatever you want to repeat you have it here. Okay, so you will repeat that section again, and once you want to finish it, you just want to write end while, and that can end your while. The next thing we're going to look at is basically repeat until loop. So you write the word repeat, and then you have your condition here, and whatever you want to repeat you'll have it in these sections here. Okay, there's your section going to be repeated, and when you want to end the repeat loop, you just simply write the word until, and that will end your repeat until loop. Okay, and that's your repeat until loop here. Okay, so there you have your iterations as well. Okay, these are simple things you can use to actually write your pseudocode.